the journey to Coolnomics. It's been 24 years. I've been working on Coolnomics my whole career, but subconsciously, right? As we all do. We're all developing our area of practice. And I'll share with you how I've laddered up across these decades to arrive at this body of work that is Coolnomics. So I moved through a first phase of my career, started in 2001 when I graduated from high school. I moved into the city from a place called Windsor, and I was part of the early 2000s rave scene. I feel very lucky to have been around in 2001, in the early 2000s, late 90s, to be part of the rave scene. That was the true rave scene, and I really learned about being part of a tribe. I learned about experiences that were hedonistic and extreme, but also safe and powerful and mind-altering and profound. And so then after, I was a raver, and then I got a job in advertising working with big agencies. I worked with brands like Oral-B and Gillette and Castrol, Cadbury back in the day. It was a good foundation to get the career started. And then I went off and got my first training, which was to go to East Sydney to go to fashion school. And I really learned about design in a very competitive environment and how to design things for the body that are both functional, that work with the body, fit the body, move with the body, but also that have form, that are beautiful. So I was really taught, and it was a pretty intense environment to learn about design versus going to say art school, which a lot of my friends were at the time. A fashion school was not pulling any punches, and so I'm really grateful for that as a foundation in my first qualification or learning. And then I went on to start my first experiential agency called View of Courage, and we worked with major brands, designing big parties for people like Ministry of Sound. It was really fun, wild, creative time, and that was really my design era. I was learning about the foundations and fundamentals of design as a practice. And then to round out that era of my life, I became a performance artist. I became a musician and a performance artist. I performed in Australia and New York with electric guitars and lots of effects pedals, microphones, costumes, projections that changed in time with the sound and lighting. I got a tattoo in front of an audience, and I let myself be a wild, creative, free artist to really know and understand what that would feel like in my spirit. And then we moved into phase 2, where it was time to solidify the practice and really learn about human behavior as a focus over the next 8 years. So I started to study behavioral science and psychology. I really wanted to understand how humans operate, because when I studied fashion design, I realized at the end of my fashion degree that I wasn't that interested in buttons and zippers. I was interested in how people represented themselves, their internal selves, as an external being. And so I guess it's logical that I wanted to understand humans on a much deeper and more structural level. I did do a bit of study at Swinburne, but I didn't graduate because during my studies and learning and research in that space, I started to develop my own therapeutic practice, and I developed it over a number of years, and then was able to take that into Australian hospitals with New South Wales Health. And it was a therapy called pressography, which captured people's life stories, excuse me, life stories in art and sound recordings, capturing their entire life story. Excuse me for a moment. Excuse me. Are we good for sound? All good? Okay. Capturing people's life stories in these Herman Rorschach looking symmetrical artworks. You can sort of see them there on camera, as well as sound recordings. And we particularly took that project into palliative care. One of the hospitals was Liverpool Hospital, and we captured people's life stories before the end of their lives, sometimes the day before their life ended, with their family. And those artworks were displayed at funerals, in people's lounge rooms. People could sit and listen to the stories of that person's life. I would ask them questions about, tell me a story of courage, tell me a story of joy, tell me a story of love. And by the end of that hour or 2-hour session, we would capture their life stories in this pressing. And then we even have here a gentleman I captured him and his wife's love story in a session, and then once she passed, he actually took the artwork and has it tattooed on his back to this very day, carrying around his love story, which is a really profound thing. And wrote the book for that project and won some awards, secured funding. It was a really powerful, beautiful time to sit with the coal face of humanity, to learn about what matters truly to human beings, right up to the edge of their own mortality. And so I got to learn about human behavior by studying it myself, but then also being amongst it and developing a therapy. I was able to get to know on a fundamental level some of the things that would matter deeply to humanity. So after that huge almost decade working in that space, I felt that I'd done as much as I really wanted to or was right to do in that setting, in the mental health and arts setting. And so then we entered the business era. And so in 2019, I went off and got my MBA at UTS, which was really life-changing. It really rounded out the knowledge that I already had from running 2 businesses before that, and being out in the world as a creative person. The MBA really brought everything together for me to understand on a structural level and on a best practice level how to run a business, how to maximize profit, how to run a balance sheet, how to run a strategy, how to implement technology. So that was a really profound experience. And while I was undertaking my MBA, I was also the senior brand and innovation lead at the Sydney's Queen Victoria building. So Sydney's Queen Victoria building takes up an entire city block. It's I think 130 years old. It's heritage listed. It sits on top of Town Hall train station, and at the time 33 million people moved through that building at that time. So it was a really large scale environment to be working in, to be leading the transformation of. And we were able to work with a team at UTS, and also made up of people from Qantas, Accenture, Tourism Australia, etc., to write the transformation strategy for the QVB on transforming their product, brand, and technology, and then to implement that. And we helped make the QVB cooler and make more money, which we're going to talk about more tonight. But that was a really powerful, real, tangible setting to watch how corporate transformation works, how to honor the heritage of brands and businesses from the past and history, and to modernize those things and make them relevant to the world. We put a cinema on the rooftop. We shut down the entire building to put on a huge performance art. We had a Biennale of Sydney performance up in the main dome planned before COVID stopped that from happening, but loved the QVB experience. I left the QVB after 2 years after doing the transformation, and I was going to work as a management consultant. I was talking with Deloitte, but then I accidentally started my own management consulting firm because there was a gap in the market for businesses that wanted to grow, that needed heavyweight MBA level business strategy, but also needed relevance and an understanding of how is the world working, and maybe were interested in being relevant. Cool. And so super aura is Latin for super edge. So we're operating on the super edge of business to write business strategies and implement them with powerful, cool businesses that are relevant in the world. That was in 2021. And then in late 2023, I released the concept for Coolnomics. And over the last 2 years, we've been building that in public, inching forward and gathering data and preparing ourselves for this kind of moment now where we're ready to take this idea and thinking to the world and influence, support in such a wild, intense time in the world that we're all living in. So 2025. What I discovered across that 20-year journey was cool demands discernment. So discernment, taste, excellence, resonance sells. What resonates with people, I think very logically we can understand, would be what evokes emotions, engages adoption and behavioral change. And then also, particularly the QVB experience and our strategy clients, I realized we need to bring the zeitgeist into the boardroom. The zeitgeist is often engaged with, the cultural zeitgeist is often engaged with by the social media team or the marketing team. But we need C-suite, senior leaders and business owners and policy writers working in the government who are engaged with the cultural zeitgeist. The cultural zeitgeist represents the spirit of the time, and we're going to talk more about that. But it led me to the question of how could we build something that would help increase discernment and excellence within larger businesses as well as smaller ones, create businesses that are more resonant with where the world is and where the world wants to go, and how can we create language, create a learning structure, create a framework that is adaptable for both CEOs, CFOs, COOs sitting in a boardroom of a major corporation that can also be translated and understood by people in smaller businesses, and then even artists, creators. And that's what Coolnomics is. It's a bridge between the underground and the boardroom. There's a huge gap between those two things, and I think the world could be better if we understood them more. How are we going for time? Okay, so we're sitting at about 7:20. How's everyone going? Can we have some comments in the chat? Is everything sounding okay? I hope all of our tech is working. It's our first time going live. I did like your fridge Siggy comment. Thanks, Fiona. Love it. Cool. All right, Dan Brophy. Okay, let's get into it. People want to just get into it. Okay. What is Coolnomics? Yes, we have our Sesame Street friends here because they're an example of Coolnomics. Coolnomics is an economic theory. It takes cool, and cool is what resonates. Cool is relevant and resonant to any individual person at a time. Cool is both an individual phenomena as well as being a collective phenomena. It is both subjective as well as there being, as we all know, there's certain moments where the collective, with a lot of the data saying, no, quite a lot of us think this is quite cool. So there's a lot to unpack there, and it's a really powerful moment. And then phenomics, which is the way that money moves or the way that value moves through a system. So as we know, economics isn't just money. It's the entire supply chain, the entire value system, the value exchange, supply and demand. And so we arrive at the economics of cool. So Coolnomics is both an economic theory, and it started as a PhD proposal, but we've brought it into the public because obviously it's the kind of topic that should be with the public. And it's also a business knowledge system or an education platform. And we'll talk more about that later on. But it's a theory that it has now been fleshed out and substantiated and brought into the world, that it now is a whole system that we can apply to business and culture to improve our systems. And it's exploring the relationship between culture or the cultural zeitgeist and the economy. So the cultural zeitgeist is always moving, and the economy is moving. And that flashpoint where those two moments meet, a great business, a great idea, a great moment in society and the economy is that flashpoint of Coolnomics. And the whole premise is that the aim is to design something that helps create more of what matters to the world, what resonates with the world, to help us make more of what we want. And as we all know, that is very complex at the moment with geopolitical volatility, with late stage capitalism crushing humanity. I mean, I don't need to tell you, we all know that. So that's why I think it's the time for Coolnomics now, because we need dialogue, we need learning, and we need to work as a collective to work better with the system that we have and to move towards a system that is better for us. Big claims, but this is us. This is our job. This is society. This is being an engaged citizen. So let's talk about the economic context for a moment. So of course, we're operating within a classical and neoliberal capitalist model, which is, value exchange, profit maximization, private ownership, and a competitive market, which has its pros and its cons, as we know. Now that we're getting to the later stages of capitalism, we're probably not seeing the best version of it. Fiona, do you mind closing that door for me, just with the sound of the cars? Thanks, mate. Okay. Then let's zoom in a little bit more. So let's come into three bodies of work that sit within the capitalist model. We've got cultural economics, which is the way that culture, arts, humanity, behaviors, norms, desires interact with the economy. Then we can also consider some of the learnings and the tenets of behavioral economics, which is also the way that people behave and the way that they desire things, but on more of a scientific level versus the cultural economics. And then, of course, if we're doing Coolnomics now in 2025, within the context of where our world is at, it needs to be regenerative. It needs to be sustainable. And as we know, that is not simple. You can't just greenwash. You can't fake it. Just like cool, you can't fake regenerative or sustainable practices. But of course, we want to be considering and moving towards those sort of ideas and objectives. And so when we zoom right into the very center, we arrive at Coolnomics, which is the flashpoint between the most potent moment, the cool, the resonance, the desire in the market, and the money meets it. And we're understanding, how does emotional resonance interact with authenticity and moving towards sustainable human behavior. So that's our economic context. Now, what are we doing here? Let's just take a step back for a moment in terms of the actual project. So phase one was late 2023. I wrote the PhD proposal and came up with the name Coolnomics. It was going to be a PhD on the science of cool, but then once I got into the proposal and was interrogating the idea further, I realized, oh no, the economics of cool is much more complex and much more useful, I think, to the world than the fun of the science of cool. So we've spent the last 2 years building in public. We've released the white paper. We've been invited to do certain things. And now we're in phase two, where we're now codifying and starting to contribute this back to the world. So in this year has been a big year for Coolnomics. We published our first national report, the Resonance Report. We've lectured at UTS to the MBA program. The MBA program that I did, it was really beautiful to be invited back and to lecture those MBA students and teach them about Coolnomics. And then also giving keynotes like at Macquarie Bank recently with the property investment sector, which was really exciting to talk about Coolnomics in the workplace and how to create workplaces that people actually want to return to and come to. It's the same kind of rule. You've got to make a workplace magnetic, a place to be, logical, desirable, undeniable, just like cool. And then the ultimate phase would be, 2031. I think we give this a good 5 years of contributing, running learning programs, lecturing and running a tour around the world in person for people to engage in dialogue around economics and Coolnomics and to learn about it and to contribute to that body of work so we all build our knowledge together. And then ultimately, I think there could be an opportunity for Coolnomics to be in business degrees and MBAs around the world to learn about how to work with the cultural zeitgeist to run businesses that are relevant and lucrative, successful for the world that we're living in. And also championing excellence. Remember excellence? Like we're all so, maybe it's pretty tiring. The world is pretty suffocating and tiring and intense at times. And there's not much space for beauty, excellence, magic, discernment. I know. So some of the things that I talk about tonight, maybe you might have an immediate response inside of yourself of, I mean, this all sounds good, but the world is burning. Yeah, touche. Absolutely. I wouldn't deny that. I'm living in the same world with you, but we are being active, engaged citizens with where the world is moving to and what we want more for us and for generations to come. The world is always changing. The world is always complex. It is very human and part of a society to move through system processes and phases of destruction and creation. And so we're all in this very intense time now. And so we need to, the only choice is to rise and to engage and to face things head on and to stick together, learn, engage in dialogue, apply, philosophical thinking and rigor in the choices that we're making to help make things better. Okay, let's get into some of the fun stuff. So what is cool? And of course we've got Dochi as, on the cover page of cool. So cool, if you look it up in the dictionary, it means something good, desirable, excellent, great. Cool is also, it's a phenomena. You can't quite put your finger on it, yet you know what it is. I know you know what it is. For you, it's ambiguous. We can't quite make out what it is, yet it's also ubiquitous. If I say it to you, you have your own POV, your own interpretation and your own clarity around what cool is. And cool is based upon your own personal context, your history, your desires, your interests, your education, where you live, the social circle that you're a part of. All of that will define your lens on what you think is cool. And we have individual, only one person thinking something is cool. And we also have things that 5 million people think is cool. That is the beautiful phenomena about it. But we do know that there's some certain principles that are consistent. And what we do know is that cool is true. Cool is that immediate, undeniable response of, I get it. I like it. I want it. And it could be not just a thing I want to buy. It can be a thing that I want to be associated with. It can be a place that I want to be. It can be people that I want to be around. It can be a feeling that I want to have. And as we know, most spending is based on some sort of emotional desire. It could be at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy where we're engaging with emotions of surviving, right up to self-actualization, indulgence, beauty, magic, luxury spending. So there's different kinds of spending out there for us, but there has to be some sort of want, undeniable nature for it to be cool and rich. You can't fake it. You can't manufacture it. It's either cool to you or it's not. And how do we create things that are cool? We engage in practices that are encouraging discernment, taste, excellence, commitment, iteration, etc. We're going to keep talking about all these sort of things. How do you do it is a whole art form. Many of you are doing it already right now. And some of us might be students. Let's speak to that from a moment. We would have a mixture of people here this evening, different age groups, different generations, and that was intentional as well. The people that I've invited to this very first one, you're here at the very first one, you're the early adopters. In fact, you're the innovators. You're at the very beginning of that bell curve. Here, a very small number of people because we didn't promote it widely, and you're here at the very beginning of something beautiful and new. So welcome. This is like a very cool, I guess that's, a cool kind of principle to be on the cutting edge, and I hope it delivers. Okay, Coolnomics principles. Let's get into it. We've got 5 principles. For something to be Coolnomics, and also Coolnomics is on a spectrum, and our businesses are going to be, and brands, ideas, anything that is relevant to this conversation, are going to be moving up and down that scale at any point in time. Sometimes we're going to get a 5 for any one of these objectives. Sometimes we're going to get a 0. This is the humbling nature of being an originator, being a someone or a leader who's bringing things into the world, that you're always scanning your environment to see how you can be making what you do better, stronger, richer. So cultural relevance, we'll go into these more in a moment. Emotional intelligence or emotional potency, authenticity and credibility, commercial viability. I mean, that's a whole MBA in itself, that pillar, but it, needs to follow the commercial principles for it to be Coolnomics. And also regenerative and sustainable. Good, cool things for our world. Yes, both. And also something I want to encourage us to do in our thinking and in our work is to continue to hold a neutral mind and to be able to hold simultaneous truths. In a complex world, in leadership, we need to be able to hold the current state and the future state that we're moving towards. We need to be able to hold this thing that is great and this thing that is not so great, yet we don't want to bust open, smash whatever it is that we might have in front of us. We need to be able to hold simultaneous truths, sit with the discomfort of transformation, and be moving along a spectrum at any point in time. So let's dive into cultural relevance a little bit more. So cool ideas are relevant to the world. They're relevant to the spirit of the time, the zeitgeist, which I'll talk more about in a moment. And cultural relevance is, the way that you would define that is being related to other things around that. What does the thing that I'm creating, what is it related to? What context does it sit within? The people that are into this thing, what are they eating? What are they drinking? What music are they listening to? Where are they going to? What matters to them? What is concerning them? What are their values? What else are they spending their money on? Where are they holidaying, etc.? That's a pretty standard marketing breakdown. But cultural relevance sits you within a context, within a cultural landscape. And some brands, some examples would be Liquid Death, the canned water brand that's broken. It's one of the most famous marketing case studies out there at the moment. Sesame Street, a classic that is still culturally relevant. It's really sad that they've just lost their funding with the political changes in America, but Sesame Street and the Muppets, Henson Studio, Sesame Street particularly remains culturally relevant because they've literally created a model that would ensure that they would bring on celebrities and they would be able to engage in topics as the world moves forward. Whoopi Goldberg used to be one of the guests when I was a kid, and I would imagine Timothy Chalamet is probably on Sesame Street now. So that is literally an intentional model that they created so that Sesame Street as an offering could move in line with the world. Honestly, 10 out of 10 in terms of cultural relevance by Sesame Street. And also Netflix, another example of an intentionality within its model, that by being a content house and a content producer as well, they can be, and technology that is scalable and changeable and flexible and algorithmic means that the content that they're offering can change and transform and iterate in line with the way that the world changes. Now, how's everyone going? Any questions, drop them into the chat. Do we have any problems with our tech? Is everything sounding okay? Is this making sense? If I can just have a little team chat, yeah. Okay. We might need some fridge Siggy. Everyone's good? Cool. Okay, let's get going. Emotional potency or emotional intelligence. Okay, the thing about cool is that it engages emotion. If it doesn't engage in emotion, it's not cool because it has to resonate if it's cool. And so resonance is something that literally happens with the heart and the mind. It's a somatic, physical experience. And so some of the best brands, some of the best businesses, engage with emotion, and it becomes a gateway to action. If we can open someone's heart, if we can engage someone's mind, then we have the ability to influence them, sell them something. I don't like to talk about in too much of an on the nose commercial way through Coolnomics, but yes, sell things to people, get them to change their behaviors, get them to adopt a new behavior, get them to do something or vote for something or be a part of something. Emotions are powerful. And when we talk about emotions, we're not talking about just crying. I don't know, I just feel like whenever you talk about emotions, you think about a room of people crying. Emotions are joy, emotions are fear, emotions are terror and uh, ecstasy, hedonism. Hedonism isn't an emotion, but if we can engage emotions, then we have the ability to be able to do things with humans. So for it to be Coolnomics, it has to have some level of emotional potency. Duolingo is an example of this in technology. As soon as you wake up, you're getting that notification from the owl. The owl became personified on social media. And Duolingo is one of the most loved brands, most engaged social media brands in the world, because they took a really courageous social media strategy by being quite fun and funny and edgy in comment sections, etc. All the marketers would know about this. Okay, Hassan Arbi. So he's doing what I hope we might be able to do one day for the business and culture world. He's doing this in the political world in the US. He's a political commentator. He's a daily streamer. And he's engaging with rich emotions. He's a left-wing political commentator, and everything he stands for is political, is emotional, and he has followers in the millions. So there's the data that sort of aligns with that proposition. And Charli XCX Brat. I mean, that was a stunning example. I feel like we've come to the end of the Brat season now, but that was a pretty incredible example of a really emotionally potent idea that Charli XCX took to the world. I mean, even that green, that font is emotionally powerful. You can't deny that there's a response to that. And then even the way that she performs on stage, like she's even like throwing up, like she's actual rave culture, actual edgy, visceral. Seeing her perform, I was so relieved to see that, yes, there are still artists. Yes, that is striking and toxic and ridiculous and frightening and perfect. That's artistry. I think we've lost a bit of our courage artistically in the world, and it's no one's fault. The world is changing, but we want to encourage some courage to come back into our creativity. Okay, for something to be cool. And this is the third one. We've got the first three principles represent the cool, and the second two principles, the final two principles represent the nomics. So to round out our cool, for something to be cool, it has to be authentic. You have to be the right person to be doing that thing. It is credible, it is authentic, it is genuine. There is no one better who could do that thing, is the ultimate example of cool. So heritage brands, wineries with 100-year-old vines, with layers of family history, making wine being in bottles, wine being held in a bottle for many years and then opened for the first time 20 years later. It's a story. And it's the only reason it's a story, the only reason we have that emotion, the only reason we have that reverence is because it's genuine and real. And also, if it's a good wine, if it's not a good wine, then it doesn't deliver on the excellence part. And a couple of examples that I think are interesting to unpack. We won't unpack them today, but in Sydney, we've got a big light festival that started in a particular version, I think 15 years ago, and is now a behemoth, very, very big, but its identity and its public perception and its positioning has changed. How does it land in terms of authenticity and credibility and the representation of a city? We could unpack that one day. Also, South by Southwest, to take a conference from Austin, Texas, dive bars, hedonism, debauchery, tech industry, and then to transplant that as a license to Sydney, it raises interesting questions in terms of the authenticity and the credibility and the depth and the dimension of the South by Southwest brand. And what does that mean? What is the South by Southwest Sydney brand and identity that is different to the Austin, Texas OG example? They're important questions to ask. And then also Supreme. Supreme has gone through a real change. It was bought by a private equity firm. It used to be a very mega hype business and brand. It's changed over the years. Where's it at now in terms of credibility and authenticity? I mean, it's still pretty heavyweight, but it's different. Probably Tyler, the creator, and Golf, his brand, Golf Wang, is maybe more of a front runner now in terms of being on that cutting edge and that intensity, because he's out there, an actual figure who is culturally relevant, emotionally potent, and very good at what he does. So maybe he kind of takes up that foothold maybe a bit better than what Supreme, might have done in the past. Okay, for something to be Coolnomics, it needs to be commercially viable. Is it scalable? Is this the cleverest way for us to deliver this product or product suite to the market? How's our balance sheet looking? Are we considering the equity and the value that we're building within the actual entity of the business or the brand around the product that we're offering to the market? So we're talking MBA, commercial management, and considering things through that lens and applying the technical practice of commercial viability. And, Apple these days, they're just as much a bank as much as they are a tech giant because of Apple Pay and because of clever ways of running a commercial model. And so often some businesses are actually driving a lot of their revenue through streams that you don't see as a consumer on the front end. And when you unpack the business model of Apple, you come to realize that there's, and also Starbucks, billions of dollars being pumped through these entities that aren't just about the product being delivered to the market. And that's when you're applying technical rigor to a commercial model to get the best outcome. Skims, Kim Kardashian, Emma Grede, a hugely scaled apparel business, leveraging the Kardashian fame and incredible technical rigor applied on a commercial level, because it is so scalable and wearable, functional, utility, right? Skims undergarments, Skims t-shirts, Skims bikinis, Skims nipple bras, Skims bush G-strings that they just released. So they have a really nice blend, Skims, of emotional potency and edge and intensity and controversy, backed by a really beautifully, I don't know if we should use the word beautifully with capitalism, but we want to run successful businesses and make money. We don't want to be, sidestepping that. But Skims is a really, really interesting one. And then Disney, the old school OG scaled model, from a mouse character to animation as an offering, amusement parks, merchandise, figurines. We know it. Huge. Whole studios. So mass scale model with Disney that is also entertainment. But sometimes Disney get it right and sometimes they don't get it right, because sometimes what they're offering as their content, the movies that they're producing or the ideas they're bringing to the world, aren't on the zeitgeist. And we've seen that with some of the Disney releases in the last few years with different franchises that have been reimagined. Sometimes teams get it wrong because maybe there's no one in that boardroom saying that isn't in line with the zeitgeist. That's not what will resonate with people right now. So it's an area of practice that needs to be in the boardroom, not just outside in the social team or the marketing team. And finally, regenerative and sustainable economics it can't be denied. We cannot sit here and talk about the economy without talking about the ultimate example that we're moving to, but it is complex. And so, people like your Teslas are kind of interesting because it's EV, it's green, that's great. But then there's some problems with that brand in terms of cultural relevance and emotional engagement because of their founder. There's, a bit of complexity there. And then AI, a huge innovation. Consumer-facing AI is a huge innovation that's been on its way for years. But now there's the reality that there's huge environmental impact. And so we're all living with this paradox of hybrid intelligence being here and on offer to us as the next frontier, yet by humanity moving forward and increasing their intelligence, engaging with this new sort of era of hybrid intelligence, human and machine collaborating together. That part is great, but then it's ruining the environment. What to do? Yes, the paradox of the modern world. We need language, we need environments, and we need experiences that help us unpack these things and move beyond the binary of just, I like this, I don't like this. We need to be able to engage with reasoning and rationale, as in our friendship groups, in our peer groups, in our businesses, and amongst people that matter to us. We need to be able to engage in conversations that can hold nuance and unpack and look at things through, a multi-lens at any point in time. And then even IKEA, I was thinking about IKEA and, their environmental impact. It's such a tangible business and so many objects IKEA is outputting so many items, and the impact, the footprint of that is massive. Could that be done better? And we know that they've made some moves in that direction, but I would imagine, I mean, not imagine, it's an imperative for businesses to move in more of a regenerative direction in order to be relevant to where the world is at, because otherwise the consumer will eventually push back and that zeitgeist will swing.